Okay, so Bobby Smurder released a song called Rats, and so when it was originally released, I still kind of do believe that it was gonna be directed at Ghana, which to an extent it kind of is. Like it's weird. So we're gonna talk about it. It's a short song. It's not really like expansively long, but it's definitely a weird thing to look at from Bobby Smurder. Now, before I get into this, and I am criticized because let's make that obviously clear that I am going to be criticized. I'm happy that Bobby Smurder is home, so he's had some great hits before he went, but so we're gonna talk about it real quick. Let's see if we have any sponsors, and I'll get right into it.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
So while listening to this, we must take into account that Bobby Smurder did serve his time. I think he's still serving his time. I think it's 2035, I think, but I think he's on parole. So, but we have to keep that in mind. This is probably for his Ready to Live album that's supposed to come out in 2023. Don't have an official date. So, with that being said, let's look at this song. Basically, the first line is, "Heard you snitching all of your friends," which this line directly to me, it's kind of throwing shade. I think that's the thing. It's kind of throwing shade to an extent of what we kind of expected from Bobby Smurder. So I'm not. There's things that I can expect, which it's definitely a weird song to listen to, but it's a valid song because Bobby Smurder went to jail, he served his time, took some time for Roddy Rebel. So we're gonna look at this first song. He introduces this by that little skit of this girl saying that there's too many rats called an inspector, which I can't say I didn't expect. Like, I expected him to act that kind of way. So, with that being said, that line right there doesn't need much. There's too many rats. There's too many people telling on each other. Which is a weird line, I think, to listen to. Because, we talk about rap culture, especially in hip-hop, and we end up at this, same, area because hip-hop is... It's vital. It's a weird kind of vital mentality to it, which to some extent I think we all understand that rap has that that culture of do not snitch on each other. But he says you snitch on all your friends, which is weird. He says he took a plea deal. He took a plea deal. He took a plea deal and let the streets down, which I think. There are a lot of people that claim they're in a culture of they want to protect the streets, and to some extent they do. But it's definitely different when you're facing X amount of years, and I'll get into it with that next line he put in, who I referenced it to Thugger. But he said you just took the plea deal. Now I'm not sure if he's talking about Tekashi, because he could be talking about Tekashi, but it's a little late to bring up Tekashi, even though Flex had mentioned that he was going to put Tekashi 69 back in his rotation, which is, I'm wondering, with this, he took a plea deal, you're out on all your friends, you let the streets down. This could be related to a lot of different topics. It could be related to Tekashi 69, it could be related to Gunna, which that deal hasn't made hasn't made it. He says they're playing a thing and record the pen. The pen hasn't dried, or the ink hasn't dried, referring to. That's why I'm assuming it's Gunner's deal that he signed recently. He signed that deal. What, maybe 2 months ago. He signed that deal recently. Like, Gunner signed that deal recently with the plea deal. That it came out that Gunner signed a plea deal. So we assume that that's the deal he's talking about. But then he refers down to a later line saying the ink doesn't dry. And then he refers to women in some sense where they're asking for money to pay their rent, which is part of like that hip hop culture to an extent, which it's fine. You know, it's a weird thing. He says most of you rappers are cap, most of you rappers are rats, which I think that's related to Tekashi, but I know that's related to Gunner because the next line is he thought the Gunner's with him. He thought the Gunner's with him was down, which this is the thing. I can't. There's no one knows the specifics on that plea deal that Gunner has, right? And so that's up for interpretation, right? Because no one knows that deal that Gunner has with the law, and I'm not justifying plea deals, but we have to talk about plea deals, right? And a RICO charge. If you get charged with a RICO on any account, that's 20 years minimum. So, you know, if you want to do a bid for 20 years, we'll talk about that. But it's not common, especially for a RICO charge, where people don't talk for a RICO charge because RICO charges are the hardest. For an example, I don't know if I can really say this, but we're gonna talk about it. So basically, but that's referring to Gunner because Gunner took a plea deal in the YSL case, and YSL case is still going on. But for example, this is kind of gonna stretch my knowledge a little bit. But the first plea deal that I can think of that I've heard was the plea deal that Sammy the Bull took for Johnny Gravano, but they had blood. Those two were out for blood when that plea deal was signed. So I get it, right? Like, that plea deal was signed for, you know. But it's, when you look at those years, especially if you got children and you look at those years, you're facing 20 years. That's practically their childhood, right? That's practically their childhood, depending on when, you know, litigations and stuff. That's practically their childhood. So when you get a RICO charge and you face it in 20 years, you be like, what's more important, my family or this oath that I took, right? And so I think people are like, well, Gunner snitched. Does anybody know? Because I don't know. I cannot find the record of what Gunner signed in that plea deal. Because if he had signed something like he was part of YSL, but he wasn't part of the gang affiliated YSL, which they could, you know, we could all argue that YSL isn't a gang. He thought it, you know, it's the way that they interpret this, right? And so it's, the wording is very careful. Like, the wording is very carefully what this plea deal matters, right? Like, can they use it against Thug would be the issue, right? But it's not uncommon, especially when there's a RICO charge. People are gonna take plea deals. Like, no one wants to face 20 years minimum. So you're either going up 40, you're going 20, you're going 30. But you know for a fact if you get convicted, you're getting 20 for a RICO charge. I just don't see the point, right, in saying for a RICO charge. You know, that's because it's hard to defend yourself if they got you for a RICO charge. They done evidence for 5 to 6 years, maybe 10, right, to build this case for a RICO charge. So you're not getting off scot-free at this RICO charge. You're getting charged with something, and for 20 years, that's just, are you worth taking the 20 years? And so when I hear Bobby Smurder's rats, and I know he did his time to an extent. I think he did his time. It's kind of controversial for me to go, you know, one side on this situation, where I actually can see both sides of the situation. Now, Gunner probably didn't know he was getting into that life, and we can argue that he didn't know what YSL was doing, but, you know, there are, and Bobby Smart says he doesn't mess with rappers, and I get it, you know, y'all chit chat, so basically y'all telling on each other, which, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, some of these lines, it's weird. Like, we have to rethink the culture of what is a rat. in hip hop, like we have to look at it, because I think only people look at hip hop at like from a standpoint of a fan's point of view. They don't look at it from a deeper point of view, and that might be the problem.